Hi, this is Norman Kochnick here in Double Bay near the Intercontinental Hotel, where the Australians and the Indian teams were staying throughout the third test. They're on their way down to Brisbane. But in the interim, it's very worthwhile having a look at the newspapers of today, both in Australia and around the world, that have commented on the third test. Of course, it was a draw. It was a victory literally for India, because in fact they didn't lose. Australia should have won it and won it comprehensively. But the likes of Tim Payne, as captain, was more bothered by antics going on the field rather than the game itself, and it affected his keeping, his captaincy, his leadership, and he came out with a public apology this morning as well in the media. It's interesting though, because the papers in Australia, I've got one right here, the paper here, which is the Daily Telegraph, actually talks quite a bit about the clash that's igniting in the series decider, which will be next on the 15th. It's got a number of issues regarding both Tim Payne and Ravichandra Ashwin, and Payne talked about he can't wait to get to the Gabba. Ash, I'll tell you what, woohoo, we're going to win. But Ashwin came back very quickly and said, just like we want you to get to India in your last series, your final series. There's a fair bit of banter about Tim Payne's captaincy being questioned, which I think most of the Australian media are actually questioning as well, and the likes of Ashwin about the players not getting along with him, which is probably a bit of a stretch to imagine. He played with a bad back. He batted towards the end of the innings and actually saved the match with he and Vihari, who was also injured with a damaged hamstring. So the Australian press has certainly given a fairly good account for the Indians. Indians survive on draw emotion, so that play on the word draw being raw emotion. And then it talks about the fighting character of the Indians. That was the likes of Robert Craddock. So there's a very notable victory for India in terms of a draw. The fact that they could actually hold their own in such a difficult circumstance, losing 3 wickets on the 5th day of the test. It is interesting though, the press is centred on India's character. There's still a bit of lingering press about that particular racial slur. There's a lot of discussion around a certain Indian now living in Australia who has claimed, and the likes of Sydney Morning Herald and a number of other papers, the Herald Sun and Melbourne, have all claimed that this particular fellow, Pratek Kivak, I think his name is, they're hanging their hat on one individual who was nearby the actual incident and claiming that he himself heard nothing. They were taken under false pretense. He was also interrogated because he was nearby. He was actually trying to support the people that were taken away, and having an Indian background, some conjecture as to whether he now is the individual that they're hanging their hat on to actually say that he heard nothing, and therefore he is the word of Australians in this incident. Clearly Siraj heard something, Bumrah heard something. The Indian team have discussed it. They brought it up with management. They brought the 2 umpires across to the incident. It's not a matter of one individual Indian, a lone individual who I'm quite struggling with the fact whether the person actually either exists or actually did do that. I think he's